I feel like there's those of you out there who, for the last 4 or 5 months, you've just been like lying awake, wondering when a random girl on the internet was gonna come back and tell you the differences between the US and the UK that other people won't tell you. So here you go. You are welcome. Hi guys, welcome back to the Girl Gone London YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylin. I'm a dual UK and American citizen. And if you're not new here, you're gonna be like, what are you doing here? Because you said that you were leaving us forever about 4 months ago. And here I am. So I'm here for this video. Maybe I'll be here for others. I wasn't trying to trick you. We just sometimes need a break from the internet. So yes, we're here. We're trying to remember how to do videos again. My camera equipment is so dusty, it's like falling off all over the place. And we're just gonna go with it. So today's video, which is a type of video that you guys often requested, is a UK versus US differences video. But we're trying to cover things that most people don't cover. So it's not about what side of the road that we drive on in the US versus the UK or more obvious things like that. We're trying to get a little bit deeper so you feel like you understand both cultures. So this wasn't even on my list, but I actually was just reminded. So this would have been a number 10, and I like things being odd numbers. So we're just gonna include this, but it's not going in the title of the video. So number one difference between the US and the UK is the amount of medication you can buy at one time. What do we call it? Off the shelf? Over the counter? Over the counter. No. What's the one where you don't need a prescription? So in the UK and in most countries, like New Zealand and things like that, here's an example. You can buy things in packs of like, what would this be? 6, 12, 24 total. So like you would buy them in small packs like this, and maybe you'd get 2 of these in a pack. And then you just keep buying packs because who needs more than 24 ibuprofen at one time? Clearly Americans do, because we buy 500 at a time. So yeah, this is ibuprofen, but you can also buy what Brits would call paracetamol. You can buy 500 of them in a thing like this with no prescription, just over the counter. And whenever I'm in America each year, I stock up on these so I don't have to keep buying all the individual packs. But yeah, I've never seen a place in a pharmacy or a grocery store or supermarket here in the UK where you can buy 500 tablets at once. But in America, anything is possible. Okay, so on to my actual video. One of the differences that I wanted to talk about was wearing your shoes inside. So this doesn't apply to every single state in the US because different states have different climates, and if you go further north, obviously it's going to be a little bit more similar to the UK. But particularly in the dry states or the southern states, it's relatively common to wear your shoes inside a house. So here in the UK, I haven't really been in too many houses where you're not expected or someone is hoping that you might take off your shoes once you enter. So that's just for many reasons. I think practicality wise, the UK tends to be more damp and there might be mud on your shoes, or you don't want to track stuff in. And so it seems relatively common here to take your shoes off in your house, which now that I live here makes so much sense. But again, in the US, it's not like that in every state. So growing up in Florida, we often just wear our shoes inside the house. We wouldn't think about taking them off, especially if you're kind of walking in downstairs or common areas, I guess, not in like bedrooms. I would still wear mine in a bedroom. In the States, but it also has to do with the type of flooring as well. So if you have tile floor or a wooden floor, which is common in southern states in the US, there's just less emphasis on taking off your shoes. They're easier to clean from mud and things like that. And in Florida in particular, you're not usually going to be like tracking in too much because it's relatively dry outside anyway. So you can think what you want about like the hygiene of whether you should take your shoes off inside, but it's not common in every US state to take your shoes off in a house. Whereas in the UK, I think it seems relatively common. And like I said, I don't think I've been in a house where that's not what happens. Okay, the next thing on my list, and I do realize it's getting a little bit dark in here, but I didn't set up a light because this is my first video back. So we're just it's just gonna get dark over my face. The second thing on my list is eating times in the UK versus the US, and particularly for dinner, though it does apply to lunch. I may have mentioned this on the channel before, but an American traditional lunchtime is like 11 or 12, 12 being the most common, but like by 11:30, you definitely feel like it's lunch. Whereas in the UK, I've tended to see that like 12:30, 1:30 is a more common lunchtime, which makes sense given the second part of this statement, which is that in the UK, it's much more common to eat dinner later than in the US. So in the UK, I would say, like if you're going to book at a restaurant or something, not everybody, but a lot of families will hit more towards the 7 p.m. mark, maybe 6:30, maybe 7:30. In the States, again, if you live in New York City, this is going to be different. But, you know, growing up in like suburban America, we typically ate dinner around 5 or 5:30. So that's a lot earlier than here in the UK. And I would say like 6 o'clock is going to be a more common American dinner time. By the time you get to 7:30, and even 8, it's just not as common in the US to eat that late. So yeah, if you visit the US from the UK, you might be surprised at maybe if you book at a restaurant that you'd want to book earlier. And if you come to the UK, you might be surprised that if you book at a restaurant for like 5:30, there might be no one else there. Okay, the next thing on my list is butter on sandwiches. So in the UK, it is so common to put butter on your sandwich before you put the filling in. In the US, we don't really use butter in that way. We use it in a lot of ways, and we use it in a lot of things, but we don't necessarily use butter to spread on bread to then eat a sandwich with. We would typically use, like, if we did anything, we would use mayonnaise, or we might just put some type of like cheese spread or something. But I would say that Americans tend to eat more dry sandwiches than here in the UK. I feel like in the UK, they really want like butter on the bread, and then whatever the filling is, I can't even think of what a filling would be, but like if you had like a chicken sandwich or something, they would put like spreadable butter and then some type of, I don't know, cheese and then chicken. I'm not sure I've ever eaten a sandwich like that, but I'm just trying to come up with things. In the US, we don't reach for the butter when it comes to our sandwiches. Okay, let's keep going. Number 4. One of the major differences between the UK and the US is that the US is one of 2 countries in the world that continue to tax their citizens regardless of their residence. In the UK, if you move from the UK and your residence is in another country, you will owe taxes in the country of residence. In America, you never escape the taxes. So even though I live here in the UK, I have to declare at least taxes in both countries. And if I make over a certain amount, then I have to pay taxes from my UK earnings to America. So this goes for any American citizen who works abroad. You will forever be declaring and probably paying at some point American taxes unless you renounce your citizenship. So taxes in the US are based on citizenship, not residence, but there are different treaties between certain countries. That means that hopefully you won't be double taxed, but it definitely does happen. And there is a financial threshold at which point you then pay taxes in both countries. The UK doesn't do that. However, to get rid of this situation and to not have to pay American taxes, again, is based on your citizenship. So you'd really have to be wanting to renounce your American citizenship, which some people do to get out of the tax issue. But I definitely would never renounce my American citizenship for taxes. So I will just be forever declaring taxes to the United States. Okay, the next difference is something called AP or advanced placement classes. So in the US structure of schooling, which is really entirely different from the UK, I think it's one of the areas that are the most different. But in the US, we have what's called AP or advanced placement classes. Now, if you're a Brit watching this, the closest thing that you could consider in your world are going to be A-levels. So it's a subject-based exam that you take at the end of the year. However, the difference is, in the UK, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, A-levels don't get you university credit. They just help you get into university. Advanced placement classes or AP classes and the AP tests that you take at the end of the year do help you get into university because universities see that you've taken the higher level classes and they see that like you're willing to challenge yourself. But for a lot of people, you actually get university or college, as we would call it in America, credit for your AP classes. So how does this work? Essentially, a university, like a proper university, I'm not talking like a British version of college, I'm talking like a full university, would say if you get this score on your AP Spanish test, then you don't have to take a foreign language in college, in university. So I went into university, and many students go into university in the US already with credits, so they have to take fewer classes from the university because the university has basically signed them off based on their results on these tests. The other thing to keep in mind, and I will do a whole video at some point on the differences between the schooling structure, is that in the US, we take general education classes even at university. So typically your first 1 to 2 years might just be like random classes that you have no idea why you're in, but it's a requirement. So I was an English and communications major doing marketing, and I took a geology class that I don't really remember anything from. I took a sociology class. I got out of taking a foreign language because I did score high enough on the Spanish AP test, but people will typically use their AP credit to mean that they don't have to take those general education classes in university and can start taking more specialized classes earlier. Okay, the next thing on our list is short, but it's about blocks. Not this kind of block, but this kind of block. And in America, if you tell someone to go 3 blocks, they would understand what you mean, because most of America has a gridded system of traffic, which means that we understand that a block is simply like 3 blocks or 3 different intersections until you turn left or right. So you count. When you hit the intersection, you've completed a block, then you get to the next intersection, you've completed another block, etc. This wouldn't work in the UK because the traffic system is not a gridded system, so it would make absolutely no sense. And blocks don't actually have to do with a specific length, as far as I'm aware, that Americans wouldn't understand that anyway. We just know it's intersection to intersection. So if you have, it could be 3 blocks and it could be a really long distance, or it could be 3 blocks and it could be much shorter depending on the size of the grid in that particular suburb or city. Okay, the next thing on our list at number 8, as the light is fading, is Super Bowl Sunday. So Super Bowl Sunday is on my list, not because it has a direct comparison to the UK, but because it doesn't. So Super Bowl Sunday is the Sunday that the Super Bowl happens. The Super Bowl happens in February, and it is the final American football game of the year between whichever 2 teams are at the top. Now, the reason Super Bowl Sunday is on my list, yes, it doesn't really have an equivalent in the sense that they don't really play American football in the UK, but that's not really my point. My point is that Super Bowl Sunday is not for fans of American football. It's for basically everybody. And most people literally only watch for the commercials or the adverts, as you would say in the UK. It's a big event for a lot of families, and you don't even really need to know the rules to American football because you're not there for the game. Some people are there for the game. Most people are there for the snacks and the socializing and the Super Bowl Sunday party. In the UK, there's going to be times when people have gotten together for big sporting events, but it's typically when whichever country that you live in the UK is in like the finals of some sort of event. So maybe like England is in the World Cup, then people get together for these like watch parties and events. Super Bowl Sunday happens every year in February. Doesn't really matter which teams are in it. You pick a team, even if you've never seen them before, you show up to someone's house with like queso and chips, and it's just a thing that we do that revolves around sports, but also involves everybody. It's a cultural thing. It's not just a sporting event. Okay, the last thing on my list is the price of cell phone bills or mobile phone bills in the UK versus the US. So first difference is in the UK, they're called mobiles, which I feel like I still don't pronounce correctly because I still say cell phone. So in America, they're called cell phones. In the UK, people know what you're talking about, but people often call them mobiles, but I feel like I can't say it correctly. Is it like mobile or mobile? I guess it depends. But anyway, these things. So the bill for how much you owe each month, you guys. In the UK, I think I pay £11 or £12 a month for basically everything that I need. Many people pay around this amount or less, maybe slightly more, but like if you're paying more than like £20 a month, it's like, what features are you getting? Like every text, every like piece of data that I need, I get for about like £12 a month here in the UK. In America, if any Americans are still watching, because probably you're so shocked that you've fallen to the floor right now, cell phone bills run an average of $100 per month, and that is on the low end. So I know people who pay $140, $160, $180 per month for the same stuff that I get in the UK for about £12 a month. And when you do the conversions between pounds and dollars, like it's still a lot more. I tried to do some research on actually why this is. And part of it is to do with infrastructure in connecting the US, which is a much larger land space than the UK. But this also applies, like the US is still one of the most expensive countries for cell phone bills in the world, even when you consider other like really large countries. And part of the reason it appears is there's just limited competition in the US. So we have less companies doing the service, so they can charge pretty much what they want compared to in other places where there's more competition to keep the costs down. So yes, if you move to the US from the UK, prepare for your cell phone or mobile bill. You could say mobile in America, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, yeah, I guess people would understand you, but we mostly do call them cell phones. But if you do the opposite and you're considering a move from the US to the UK, then you've just saved yourself a bunch of money each month, just because the prices of cell phone plans are different in each country. Okay, congratulations! You made it to the end of this video. I don't have a plan, like I said, so I'm not going to promise you anything. I already broke up with you one time and then decided, actually I think 2 times, and then decided that I was gonna come back. So we're just gonna like live in the present moment for this video, and it was what it was, and I might see you again. Hopefully I will. But I feel like there's those of you out there who for the last 4 or 5 months, you've just been like lying awake, wondering when a random girl on the internet was gonna come back and tell you the differences between the US and the UK that other people won't tell you. So here you go. You are welcome. Thank you for watching. If you have no idea who I even am because you're like, how did this girl get into my YouTube like recommendations? That's also fine, but you're listening to me right now, which means you've made it to the end, so maybe you enjoyed, so you could click subscribe. Up to you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I used to say I'll see you again next time, which I guess is also true. I don't know when that will be, but I will see you again next time. Thanks for watching.